Captain Peter Cutsie, South Korea. This is my briefing room. We're going to brief tonight on the visual traffic pattern. This maneuver comes at the very beginning of an initial type rating course. And for new pilots to heavy aircraft in the airline world, it's a great way to introduce the power settings, pitch attitudes, and handling of thrust and trim, because the entire maneuver is done without the AFDS systems. In other words, the entire maneuver is done with the cake. You remember my briefing on the cake and icing? Remember, the cake is the raw data and the basic part of flying, and the icing is the magenta. We're not going to use any magenta for this particular maneuver. All right, so it gives the pilot an opportunity to understand the relationship, the very important relationship between thrust, pitch, and trim. Very, very important. Let's get right into it. This is an overview, a chart I designed years ago, and we've been using it for years, and it works well. This is basically what the traffic pattern will look like. We're going to be in Dubai for this briefing on runway 12 right. The first officer will be the pilot flying. It'll be a right-hand pattern, so the first officer can see the airport environment, of course. If the captain was doing the flying, it would be a left-hand pattern. We're in the simulator, remember, we're training. Okay. All right, we're going to be at a weight of 60,000 kilos, and we're going to be using full thrust for takeoff and flaps 1. Your instructor will use the OPT, the Operational Performance Tool, to compute the speeds and the stab trim settings for you. Now, this chart also has many things on it. The post-it note is for the instructor to set up the iOS panel. The other note in the bottom is how to fly the pattern. And by the way, all of this is in the package in this briefing that I will put in the package in Google Drive for you. And also a note not to arm speed brakes or auto brakes if you're doing touch and goes. For the sake of this briefing tonight, it will be a full stop landing. So downwind, you will arm the speed brakes and you will arm the auto brakes. And we'll use an auto brake setting of 2 for this demonstration landing tonight. All right, so there we go. And the fixed page will have a 2.5 nautical mile ring within a beam at 90 degrees. Your instructor will set that up, and that's how it's done here. So let's go now to a quick look at the Dubai International Airport. We're going to be taking off and doing our visual traffic pattern on runway 12 right, which has a magnetic track of a 119, downwind 299. All right. And the airport elevation in Dubai is 65 feet. So we're going to be using an altitude rounded above 65 up to the nearest 100. So it'll be 100 plus 1500, which is the height above ground for a traffic pattern. So on the MCP in the altitude window, we're going to set 1600. Okay. And as far as a reminder on final approach to be established on the center line by 500 feet, we'll set our barrel bug minimum to 565, which is 500 feet above airport elevation. So that, keep that in mind, and the instructor will have you set up the nav display. Make sure that you use map center on a 10 nautical mile scale. You'll get a good picture in front and behind. And may I suggest that in real life, that you use map center when you're close to the airport, especially in the arrival mode. You'll see much more. behind you and in front of you. Okay, let's go back to the main menu and have a look at the setup. There's the setup, all the things I was talking about. This is for the instructor's sake, but also you can look at it to know how to do it. If your instructor asks you to set it up, you go to a clean slate, of course. And how do you clean the FMCs from a route that's already there? Well, one quick way is to actually select the old database, make it the active, and then select the current database. That will delete everything and then start from scratch. Select the origin, the destination, and go to the arrivals page, 1, 2, right, and go to the legs page and line select 1, 2, right to the top, then line select 1, 2, right to the scratch pad, go to a fixed page, put it in, and then select a 90-degree radial. In this case, the radial 209 dash 2.5. So that's your runway track is 119. So 209 at 2.5 will give you a 90-degree reference. And then map center scale on the 10 nautical mile scale. All right, so there we go. That way you'll have a good picture. Now let's get ready to flying the pattern. A lot of things happened, and it happens very fast because you will be at full thrust and flaps 1. So the traffic pattern will be flown in manual flight without any AFDS systems. The pilot flying will disengage the auto throttle after takeoff thrust is set. So normally your instructor will reach up and do that for you because you're pretty busy focusing on what you're doing. Remember, this is training. So the pilot monitoring will switch off the command bars after TOGA is selected. Very important. So we don't want command bars and we don't want the auto throttles. So your instructor will brief you on this and then away you go. Take off, track the center line. You know how to track the center line. You know what the drift is. So 5 degrees. So you should fly a heading of 124. That will track you out to 800 feet. 800 feet above airport elevation. So at 865 on the barrel, altimeter, you're going to turn right, first officer, and you're going to do 4 things. They're pretty well all done at the same time. Pitching down to 10 degrees above the horizon, calling for flap 5, thrust levers starting to come back and rolling on 20 degrees of bank in nil wind, but because we have a headwind, 15 degrees of bank. So all of that at the same time. Your reference speed will be the white bug. It'll be very close to your flaps 5 speed. So start bringing the thrust back to 80% N1 initially, then all the way back to eventually 58 to 60% by the time you level off at 1,600 feet. Otherwise, you'll exceed your flaps 5 speed, and you'll exceed the term radius, and you won't be at 2.5 nautical miles downwind. So you've got 4 things to do. At 800 feet above airport elevation, pitch down to 10 degrees above the horizon, rolling on bank up to 15 degrees, calling for flaps 5 and bringing the thrust levers back through 80% N1 and slowly retarding them as you approach your level off of 1,600 feet so that you are about 58 to 60% when you level off at 1,600. Your pitch reference will be 6 degrees of pitch at 60 tons and approximately 60% N1. 6, 6, 6. What a deal. The pilot monitoring is going to give you the gear up. She'll call positive rate, and on that call, when you ensure you have positive rate, you'll call for gear up. The pilot monitoring will raise the gear, and the pilot monitoring will select flaps 5 when you call for it as you start your turn, and your pilot monitoring will go to the approach page, select flap 30 VREF speed, and set the bug at VREF, the speed bug at VREF, so that you've got a reference. Now, we'll set flaps 5 speed, that is, reference. So now you'll find your white bug, and the speed that your pilot monitoring sets will be very close within a couple of knots. So you're busy time. And then your pilot monitoring you should ask him, but he should actually set a heading of 294. In this case, because your track is 299, the wind is from the left. Remember that formula I gave you, 5 degrees of drift, so 294 on the heading will put you on a beautiful track, 90 degrees downwind, and you'll see that in the video at the end of this presentation. Incidentally, during the video, I will not talk. You can watch. You'll hear me, perhaps, if the sound is generated, but if not, you know what the picture is telling you. I won't say anything because the video and sound won't be synchronized in this presentation when you view it later in your package in Google Drive. Okay, so a busy time as both of you are helping each other. And remember, trim, 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 trim. And if you put the airplane symbol, the center of the airplane symbol, just sitting on the 5-degree pitch reference on the PFD, that'll be 6 degrees of pitch. That's a good reference point to start for 60 tons and approximately 58 to 60% N1. And trim, 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 so that you basically are flying the airplane properly. And that's what the whole idea of this exercise is. Prog 2.4 should be on both CDUs. It's the honey of a page in the FMC. Tailwind, headwind, crosswind. All of these neat things are there sitting for it, waiting for you to use them. All right, so the timing is broken down into 3 elements. The total timing is 45 seconds from a beam, the landing threshold. And we use as a reference when the airplane symbol, the triangle, is halfway through the radial, the 209 radial, off the threshold of runway 12 ready to Dubai. When the airplane symbol is halfway through, timing. Pilot monitoring, call timing, punch the clock. Pilot flying, don't punch any clock, just fly the airplane. Focus on flying the airplane. Okay, all right. At the end of 20 seconds, pilot monitoring calls 20 seconds. Pilot flying, gear down, flaps 15, speed brakes arm, because this will be a full stop. And the pilot monitoring selects gear down, flap 15, and selects and sets flap 15 speed on the MCP. At the 40-second mark, the pilot monitoring calls 40 seconds, at which time the pilot flying calls flaps 30, set VREF 30 plus 5. The pilot monitoring does that, and that consumes 5 seconds. Then the pilot flying starts a 25-degree bank turn, 90-degree turn to base leg. The pilot monitoring sets the 90-degree heading. Meanwhile, the pilot flying will start down at 500 feet per minute as a starter and set thrust to roughly 55, 56%. But basically is when you see the poppy, 2 red and 2 white, that's when you start your descent upon intercepting the vertical path. That's standard. So the pilot monitoring will do all applicable checks. The pilot monitoring will put the landing gear lever to the off position on the NG, not on the max, and will do the engine start switches will stay in continuous because it's a traffic pattern. So the pilot monitoring will do the required checks. I really suggest, because you're close to the ground, that you don't pull out checklists. And this is one particular case you're going to brief on what you have to do for the after takeoff procedure, and then on the landing checklist, which is basically very simple. You follow what your instructor tells you, but when you're close to the ground, your eyes and brain should be outside and not looking inside at checklists. In any case, your instructor will tell you what to do. So, okay. So, and then when the 30-second trend vector touches the extended center line, start your turn. And as long as you keep the tip of the extended of the noodle, or the 30-second trend vector is the proper term, if you keep the tip of it on the extended center line, you'll roll out on the center line. And you should be wings level before 500 feet. And we'll show you that in the video. Okay, so that's it. without any further ado, let's go to the video. I won't talk while we watch it, and then we'll make a comment after.
Here we are downwind at 1,600 feet above sea level, that is 1,500 feet above airport elevation. And we're coming up to an abeam point, at which time we'll take a timing. If you notice, our pitch is 6 degrees of pitch up approximately. We're close to 60 tons. Timing started. We're looking at a 40-second timing. In the first 20 seconds, we will remain at flaps 5. At the 20-second mark, we'll select gear down, flaps 15. We'll set flaps 15 speed. For touch and go, no auto brakes and no speed brakes. Gear down, flaps 15, and flaps 15 speed. At the 40-second mark, we'll start a right turn to 030 degrees and start a descent in flaps 30. We are at that timing now. Flaps 30. We'll start a turn, and we'll start down. At approximately 500 feet per minute. And we'll set a speed to VREF 30 plus 5 knots. The landing check has been completed and must be completed before we get to 1,000 feet above the ground. The trend vector is useful. In this case, we have a tailwind. We could start turning a little sooner. Basically, if you keep the tip of the trend vector on the runway, you will align yourself with the runway. The rate of descent should be close to 800 to 850 feet a minute on final. Making a small correction. And here we are coming up to the 700-foot mark, and we are approximately 2.5 nautical miles. And we're going to track the center line, and today it'll be a heading of 125. Well, we're visual anyhow, but a heading of 125 should keep us on the center line, as you can see.
Plus 100.
Yeah. Continue.
Minimum.
Okay, so there you have it. I hope you enjoyed that. One comment I made in the video, which I'm going to correct right now, is you don't start turning any sooner when on base leg. Wait until the trend vector touches the extended center line. The noodle, or the 30-second trend vector, knows the wind, knows the ground speed, knows everything. So you use the tip of it when it touches to start your turn, and the rest of it, as you can see, turns out very beautifully. I hope you enjoyed the video. Contact information is on the screen. See you in the next briefing. Thank you.